this battle, you're going to have to multiply that many times over. But the demonstration that we're giving you today will at least give you an idea of the two main types of weaponry that were involved here in this battle. Because we are going to be firing some blank rounds, there are a couple of special safety precautions for you to observe today. First and foremost, you'll see our orange rope here, a very technical safety line. Please don't cross that line. That's there for your protection. You'll also see safety observers at a couple points on the line. Please follow any instructions that they give you. They are here to keep you safe. You'll also probably have realized, especially because you see a cannon out here, we're going to have some pretty loud noises associated with this demonstration. So before they fire, you may want to cover your ears. If you've got small children with you, you may want to cover their ears for them. And if you wear a hearing aid, you may want to turn that down. The big cue that they're going to be ready to fire on both muskets and our cannon is going to be command ready. So you can listen for that ready command, and that's when you'll need to cover your ears. If you have any pets with you, make sure you have a nice tight hold on that leash before they fire. I also want to send a big thank you to all of the volunteers out here who are making these programs possible. We absolutely would not be able to do this without them. So we really thank them for their service. The logistics of our program today, we are going to start with our infantry demonstration. Once that concludes, we're going to turn it over to the artillery. We'll have 2 artillery firings with a talk in between. And then once we're done with all of that, and also the cannon is cleared and safe, we will drop the safety line out here and invite you out to take a closer look at their equipment, ask any questions that you might have. I also want to point out that we do have a couple of camps that you can visit if you want to learn more. So back behind the Maryland Monument, the one with the dome there, we have our U.S. camp. And then across the way, back behind the Dunker Church, we'll have our Confederate camp. So if you want to visit any of our volunteers later on in the day, you're welcome to do that too. So I'm going to turn it over to the 3rd Maryland here to get started with the demonstration.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Is this working? Yeah. It's weird, you can't hear it over here. Thank you so very much for coming out. As was mentioned, before you, you see a small portrayal of a Union infantry company. At this point of the war, would have probably been a little less than 100 per company, but at the beginning of the war, they were usually manned at about 100 per company and about 9 to 10 companies that would make up a regiment. So we'll need to just use our imagination today and picture thousands of soldiers in front of you firing. But we're going to go through basically the equipment that the soldier would have carried, a typical soldier would have carried on them, and then also how they trained to load and fire their muskets, and then we'll also go through that demonstration as well. So what you see in front of you here is Sergeant Siebert. He is carrying the basic load of an infantry soldier. His headgear, he has a forge cap, which has some excess material, which was great. So if they were on the march and could stop, they could put some items in there. That's kind of where the name forge comes from. He is carrying a 3-band rifled musket, and I'll get into the rifling here in a little bit. He has a leather belt around his waist. On that belt, he has a small little black pouch. It's a cap box in the front. Inside of that, and I know most of you will not be able to see this, but inside of that was a little brass cap. Looks kind of like a small top hat, and inside of it is fulminated mercury. I'll get to that in a little bit here. On his right hip, he has a cartridge box. Turn to your left. See it on the back right hip? That would hold around 40 cartridges, paper cartridges like this, that would have a round powder and a little wadding with a little flap on the top part there. On his left side, he has his bayonet and scabbard, canteen, and a haversack, which would have items that he might need, some food, rations, other items that he want readily available and quick, that were easy to get to. And then on his back, he's carrying a knapsack with a bedroll on top, or a blanket roll on top. Inside the knapsack normally would be maybe extra pair of socks, shirt, other maybe personal items that he would carry with him on the move. A lot of times, soldiers would be on the march, particularly the 3rd Maryland, which we're portraying. They were here, actually, on the battlefield where you're standing. They fought up this way towards the Dunker Church. Normally, before heading in the battle, troops would have dropped that knapsack, anything to lessen the load. A lot of them marched 15, 20 miles. Then you're going to go into battle, so the last thing you would want is all that kind of extra weight in hopes that maybe you would get back and pick up your stuff. A lot of times they did not. He's wearing a 4-button sack coat. This was pretty much the workman's coat at that time. Early part of the war, and even still at this period, you would have seen some frock coats, which is what I'm wearing. Has more buttons, it's a little more dressier, has more material down here, so it's a little bit warmer. The sack coat was predominantly the enlisted man's issued uniform. He's wearing a cotton t-shirt or a wool shirt underneath. His trousers are also wool, and they are sky blue. Early part of the war, particularly for the regular army, would have been a dark blue, but they transitioned more into the lighter blue. The dye was also cheaper and easier to manufacture. And then on his foot, he's wearing wool socks and brogans. They're little booties. They're ankle leather boots that wear out pretty quickly. So you'll see on both sides, both armies had massive job making sure that the soldiers had adequate footwear. That was just not a southern problem. It was also on both sides. Thank you, Dan. So we'll get into what we're about to do right now as far as loading the weapon. What made this very interesting period of time was the weaponry on particularly both sides. And before the Civil War, you had the flintlock mechanism. So you had to have the powder and the flint and the metal striking the powder and igniting the weapon. As I mentioned before, now we've moved on to a percussion cap system, right, with the fulminated mercury, so that makes it a lot easier to fire the weapon and have an accurate fire. But then also was the introduction of rifling into the barrels. So before this, particularly in the Revolutionary War, you were using Napoleonic tactics, long lines of soldiers standing close together, shooting at each other. And the reason why they had to stand so close together, and you remember the saying, don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes, well, that's because the weapons weren't that accurate. So you really had to get close in with each other to fire a massive wall of lead and hope that you could inflict as many casualties and take the field. They're still using those same tactics, the Napoleonic tactics and standing in front of each other, but now we have rifling, and it's the small grooves that are drilled into the barrel that goes all the way down. And so if you're watching football right now and you see a quarterback throw a really bad pass and it's flopping through the air, that's kind of like what the flintlock muskets did before, with smoothbore weapons. Now with rifling, it's like watching Tom Brady or Jaden Daniels throw a really low pass down the field with a tight spiral. It's long and it's accurate and precise, and that's what happened here. And so that's right, and then we get a touchdown. So with that, now you have a more accurate weapon, but you're still using the same tactics, and that's where you see so many casualties, particularly from the weapons. And then obviously artillery, we'll talk about some of their stuff as well. So in order to understand how to fire this weapon like a soldier should, being able to fire 3 rounds in a minute accurately, they had to be very well trained and practiced on this weapon, and there were 9 specific steps that they were trained on to load and fire this weapon that they had to do each and every time that they had to go through that, and I'll demonstrate that now. Attention, company. Load in 9 times. Load. They've taken the musket, they've put it between their feet, they've reached behind their right hip where the cartridge box is to grab that paper cartridge. Handle, cartridge. They pulled out the paper cartridge, they've opened up the flap, and they put the paper wadding in between their teeth. It's important to note that one of the key medical requirements to join the Army at that time was to have 2 opposing teeth so that you could do the next piece. Tear, cartridge. Charge, cartridge. They're now pouring the powder down the barrel. They are pushing the lead ball into that barrel. Little lead ball you see here. Put their hand on their ramrod. Draw, rammer. Now these next two commands are extremely important. Ram cartridge. Particularly this one. Return rammer. If the soldier did not follow that command, that's why this is so important. If they fired that ramrod down the field, they'd be left with an expensive club and they wouldn't be able to fire again. So that was such a critical component there. Shoulder, arm. For safety purposes now, we're going to finish the last commands facing the other direction. Right about. Prime. Now they're reaching into that cap box. They're pulling out that brass cap with the fulminated mercury. They're putting it on a little cone where the flintlock mechanism would have been. You probably know. Does anybody know the next three commands? There we go. Company. Ready. Hey. Fire. Load.
Good. I expected it to be louder.
Front rank. Ready. Hey. Fire. Load. Rear rank. Ready. Hey. Fire. Load.
They shoot that right beside their ears. God.
They have,
I bet they all left the war deaf.
yeah.
Company. Firing by file. Firing 3 rounds. On the 3rd round, load, come to the shoulder. Commence. Fire.
Okay.
Ceasefire. Load. Ceasefire. Shoulder arm.
Set the field on fire.
Got real fire?
Sometimes it gets a little weird.
Well, what's going to happen when they fire the cannon?
Better leave it up there just in case.
Always have to be ready to 2 jobs, fire and
Fire, fire.
company. Ready. Hey.
Yeah.
Fire. Prime.
Yeah. They're walking through pain.
Yeah.
Oh, use this right, ready, aim.
Yeah, but the one guy fired before he said
Yeah.
fire.
Ready.
Becomes second nature.
Hmm? Yeah, second nature, right.
Ready. Hey. Fire.
big thank you to our infantry volunteers. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to change gears now and shift to our artillery. Again, a warning, it's going to be quite loud. They're going to fire one round to start off, and then we'll have a talk about Civil War artillery, and then we'll fire one more round after that.
Commence firing! Solid shot, 1,400 yards, load!
Limber. Get the ammo. Set the fuse.
You hear that vibration?
It'll be loud.
Ready!
I'm excited. They did it. That was good, dummy.
Fire!
Damn.
Fire!
See the flare?
It's okay, kid. It's okay. Come here. Come here. It's okay.
I could have caught that. No, you could not. No, I could feel the blast.
Yeah, the yellow flare. Give you an idea of tree line. They shot. So, if it were to hit me, I'd probably.
They're shooting 2 shots.
We actually two real. Like they're only doing two.
Only 2 cannon shots.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How about that?
Yeah.
So thank you all for coming out, visiting Antietam Battlefield here today. The group you see in front of you represents the 4th, or rather Battery B of the 4th United States Artillery, and this is just a small fraction of what you would see from a Union artillery battery. A full, complete battery would be 6 guns, along with 6 limbers, which hold an ammunition chest, and then further behind the action, out of the distance, would be a caisson, which holds 2 additional ammunition chests, as well as the horses, which are the prime movers of all of these pieces. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the gun today, as well as the men responsible for loading and firing this weapon, along with the types of rounds this gun is capable of firing, and the horses, which again are the prime movers of these pieces. Now, the gun that is sitting before you is a 12-pound light gun howitzer, more commonly referred to as the Napoleon. It is a smooth bore piece. It does not have the rifled grooves in it, so like the infantry had mentioned, instead of the round being spiraled and rotated, this round is moving kind of like a softball pitch, not as accurate as a rifled gun would be. Now, this gun is primarily an infantry killer. Make no mistake though, it has also been used and also was used for counter battery fire, as well as firing at buildings. Now, the men that are operating this piece, they are all given specific numbers. And those numbers correlate to what job they are responsible for. But these men are trained on all the different positions on this gun. So if someone were to fall in battle, the others would be able to pick up their slack because they have been trained and would know what to do. So starting at the back of the gun, at the limber, we have gunners number 6 and 7. They are the math machines. Because when the round is called for by the gunner, myself, they will open up the top chest of the limber, and you will see on there is a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper has measurements and distances for whatever round has been called for. And if the round is an exploding round, their job is going to be to calculate how short to set the fuse for, so that way when the round is fired, it will go out at the appropriate distance, and it will detonate at the appropriate time, usually above the heads of the incoming enemy. So once gunners number 6 and 7 have calculated the round and how short to set the fuse, they are going to deliver that round to gunner number 5. Gunner number 5 has that leather satchel that you see. The round will be situated in that satchel, and gunner number 5 is advancing to the front of the gun. Now, while all of that is happening, we have the 4 gunners at the front of the gun. Gunner number 1 has a tool known as the sponge rammer, and his initial job is going to be to take the sponge side, put it into the bucket of water underneath the muzzle of the gun, get it a little bit wet, and then he is going to ram that sponge down the barrel, extinguishing any embers that might be in there. While gunner number 1 is doing that, gunner number 3 has a tool on his thumb known as a thumb stall. Gunner number 3 is making sure that on the back of the gun, where the vent hole is, there is no air, there's no oxygen getting into that gun. Now, once the sponge has been inserted, gunner number 1 removes the sponge end, and at this point in time, gunner number 2 at the front is going to retrieve the round from gunner number 5 and going to place the round at the front of the muzzle. Once the round has been placed at the front of the muzzle, gunners number 5 and 2, they step away from the wheel. At this point, gunner number 1 turns that tool around to the rammer side, and in one lunging motion, will ram the rammer all the way home, situating the round at the back of the piece. Now, at this point, gunner number 3 and 4, they are going to be working together because gunner number 4 has a tool known as the friction primer. The friction primer is attached to one end of that long rope known as the lanyard that you see, and that friction primer is going to act like the firecracker that will ignite the round that is in the back of the gun. Now, on the command of ready, gunners number 3 and 4 will step into the gun in unison, and once they have done that, gunner number 3 is going to remove a new tool known as the vent pick, and gunner number 3 is going to insert that pick into the vent hole, piercing the powder bag. Once the powder bag has been pierced, gunner number 4 is going to take the lanyard with the friction primer attached, stick it into the vent hole, and making eye contact at all times, gunner number 3 is going to hold that friction primer in place as gunner number 4 slowly stretches the lanyard taut. Now, once that lanyard is taut, gunner number 4 is going to nod number 3 away from the gun. Gunner number 3 will slide out of the wheel. Gunner number 4 will then turn to give a nod to the gunner, indicating that all is ready, and then as the gunner, I will give the command and physical arm movement to fire. And at that point, if all goes well, the gun goes boom. And then the command would then be given to either cease fire or a new round would be called out for, depending on the situation. Now, let's talk about the rounds that are being fired from this gun. So the first round that I had called for was that of solid shot. This is a 12-pound solid steel ball. This is going to be capable of inflicting a lot of damage either on buildings or on advancing columns of troops. This gun is capable of firing an effective range of about 1,600 yards. Solid shot's going to be the one that can get it done. Now, when this solid shot round was fired, many soldiers would make the mistake of seeing that ball casually bouncing along the ground, and in an effort to slow it down, they would stick out their leg, and their leg would keep going on right along with the round. Now, we had talked about exploding rounds. The second, or one of the exploding rounds that this gun is capable of firing is that of shell. So shell is just like solid shot, except it is hollow on the inside. And it is now filled with gunpowder. So whenever the round for shell is called, whatever the distance is, gunners number 6 and 7 are going to calculate where to cut that fuse so that it will explode above the heads of the incoming enemy. This is going to send rounds of shrapnel flying across a wider field of soldiers, usually marching in longer rows. The second type of exploding shell would be that of case shot. So case shot, very similar to shell, but instead of being hollow, there are now iron balls inside of the case shot. So when that round explodes, it's not only sending the shell casing, but iron balls spraying in any direction. If those 3 rounds don't get the job done, the bad guys are still coming. The round that no artillerymen wanted to hear was that of canister. Because if the round for canister gets called, that means the bad guys are in range of their muskets and rifles, and they are now shooting at us. So if canister is called for, they are within 300 to 400 yards of our position, and canister would be given, and this gun now becomes a giant shotgun, because canister is going to have and look like this giant tin can, but inside there will be 27 iron balls in this as well. And a good gunner, to try and inflict as much damage as possible, is going to lower the gun as far as they can to the ground, so that way when it is fired, it's going to pick up dirt, rocks, wood, in addition to everything coming out of this canister and spraying in the face of the enemy. But if that doesn't stop them, double canister would ring out, and that will be 2 canister bags. One of the bags of gunpowder would be chopped off, and now we have 2 of these tin cans going into the gun itself to be fired. So we've talked about the gun itself, the men who are responsible for loading and firing this weapon, the rounds, but most importantly, the one that we haven't talked about, the ones that you don't see in the way distance, are those of the horses. Because the horses are your primary movers. You do not want your soldiers responsible for lugging and toting these guns from place to place on the battlefield, from town to town as we move. So these horses, 6 of them, moving a battery that you see in front of you here, going to move either the gun and limber or the limber and caisson together. Those 6 horses are accompanied by 3 drivers. Those drivers are going to sit on the left side of the horses. And the first 2 horses that are making up a gun team are that of the lead pair. The lead pair of horses, they are the smartest horses. They are the ones that want to be in charge and run the show. The middle pair of horses is going to be your swing team. These are the horses that act like a lot of us. They just want to go with the flow. They want to do their job. They want to get fed at the end of the day. And then finally, your last pair of horses, the ones that are closest to the wheels, are going to be your wheel horse. These are your biggest, burliest horses that are going to start the cannon and limber in motion. Now, in addition to the gunners that you see here, batteries also have some additional help as well. They're going to have blacksmiths, they're going to have farriers, which are your horse doctors who take care of all of the horse's needs, and then you're going to have a bugler as well. The bugler is going to be responsible for giving lots of different calls throughout the course of the day. Now, as an artillery horse, they are tuned in to 2 calls in particular. The first call that they are going to be tuned into is that of oats, O-A-T-S, and Andrew, our bugler, is going to play that for you. And once those horses hear call for oats, their ears are going to prick up because they know that they're about to get a feed bag slapped on them. An average artillery horse has been allotted 26 pounds of food a day. Most of the times they often did not get that. Another call that they are highly in tune with is that of water. And again, same thing, because now when they hear the call for water, they know that they're going to get a much needed drink. The Civil War artillery horses are allotted about 4 gallons of water per day. Again, many of them did not get that. Here at the Battle of Antietam, there were about 10,000 artillery horses here. There was a casualty rate, I think it was 1,100 horse casualties here that day. Okay, so again, very taxing, very tolling on the horses as well. So, if the time is right, which I'm getting the nod that it is, we are going to go ahead and fire off our last round for you today. Once we have fired the round and secured the piece, we will lower the rope, and we invite you to come out, talk to our gunners, ask questions, take pictures, and feel free to engage with us. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Wouldn't be plugging your everything.
Cover your ears.
If I was a mechanic or something.
Cover your ears.
The person wants to pull the string down. I would have been like that.
Commence firing! Case shot, 1,100 yards. Load! Advance the round. Ready. Fire! Cease fire!
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, hit directly by a camera.
Any questions? Well, there's 2 ways we can go.
Shot time.
Or we can go around the corner.
11:35. Let's go around the corner. Okay. I guess so. I can't imagine.
Back to the 80. We gotta get back.
Yeah, we already called it 9-0. I know that they went to the...
All right.